Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about this very interesting Darth Alice hilt. Now this is called the Briar, and I believe that's kind of the in-universe name of the wood. I'm not quite sure if that's the case or not. But yeah, Todd basically built this around this solid wood core. He'd been doing some stuff where wood was part of the grip, but then he would have like epoxy resin that was clear or translucent to show through. But he wanted to do a more simple design, and I think this came up on eBay, and so my client snatched it up, sent it to me, and it's been in the queue for a bit, but we knew we wanted to do the color display on it. So I had originally done another one for him that was higher in the priority list and got that out the door. And so this one now is going to benefit from that as well. So this has a fully removable chassis, but Todd did this really interesting all-in-one kind of just very simple but very elegant look. So we've got these etched brass shrouds with this filigree design. He did these custom machined plunger switches. Now, one thing I did before I got into the chassis design was I made sure to use some of that flexible rubber adhesive that will allow the switch actuator to move but not fall out. So that's one of the things I did before I really got into the design of this. And then one thing I did was kind of to stay in line with the theme was I used an antique brass thumb screw. So I will ship the Saber with the original hex key, but right now the only hex that's necessary is this chassis retention set screw, which I have left undone, so we can talk about that here in a second. And then the other thing I did was Todd just had a black anodized cover tech here, and while I was waiting on some other stuff, I decided to take the anodization off and then use some surf-in chemical patina to get it closer to this brass finish, and then I clear coated it to make sure it kind of stayed that way. And then that way it kind of all ties in with the brass thumb screw, and you hardly need any machine or tools. You do need one to get that. So we'll take the blade plug out. You can see it's currently on and flashing. This is a very cool little blade plug that Todd did that has this brass ring with a translucent material, and then this stator motor with like a copper plug at the top. Very cool looking. Allows for some shine through, and then we can see the top of our chassis. So with that regard, let's go down to the table and talk more about the electronics and what went on with the install and the config. We'll hop back out. We'll show a few blade styles off with a test blade. We won't do the full thing. Again, this is a return customer. It's very similar to the last color display hilt that I had installed for him. So we'll just go from there. So as mentioned, we've got these plungers. Now, when the Saber's facing up like this, and you can see both switches, the right is your main and the left is your aux. So depending on how you want to hold this, you can, either do thumb and forefinger or, always thumb. But again, I'll be providing an Allen key. It's probably not this one. I think this is just one that fits to engage this set screw. What that'll do is that'll push the chassis up against the inner wall, and it makes sure that the actuators can actually get to the right distance of the switches that are on board. So here is the chassis itself, and it is on, but we've currently got it set to where the display is off. So this is the color display that we've been installing lately. And we can see my resin greeblie design, very similar to some other ones that I've done in the past. And then we kind of went a little bit simple. So we have 2 strips, and then that way we're focusing mostly on the color display. This does run a MasterOS version of the OS 8, which is the most recent. So it's not necessarily OS 8.4, which is a very stable release. This is the one that had to go through some extra bit of programming to ensure that the color display worked just like I did last year. So all of that is the same. So that being said, I subbladed this strip under each greeblie. So these 2 vents have their own programming, and then this baffled has its own programming, and those can be updated to whatever you want. However, the 2 sides run in parallel because they all come off the same data line, to just, again, keep it simple. But here are those onboard tactile switches. We went with the largest appropriate ones that would fit. That way it made alignment very easy. I did run some tests with, the brass hat tactiles, but those being so small in the actual hat of the brass that you really kind of had to twist, and it wasn't very easy. Now I've made it such that, you know, you just plop the saber or the chassis in and it will always work. With that regard, we do have these little guides here. So you'll see these little channels. So those will just miss the base of those plunger actuators. We do have my custom battery wrap. If we take this out, got a fully removable battery, and then we've got the terminal indicated there with the Darth Alice Sabers logo in there. And again, my custom battery wrap. So when we turn it on,
was right. You are difficult to kill.
so we can do the manual blade array to get the color display to come on. Let me see if I can hold this and display it at the same time. There we go. So now we got the color display on. And again, what happens is if we, you know, switch.
My name is Dagan Gera.
I've done quite a bit of work to kind of do all these little independent crystals and
Centauri
fonts. Now this customer knows how to program this, so it's not going to be the same. But yeah, so when you do have the chassis out, it's the same as the front of the Saber. This will be your power and this will be your aux as it lines up with the Proffie. This is a Proffie V3. So the config's on the SD card. This has a plethora of Hilt of fonts so that we can, you know, show off all of the functionality of that display. And yeah, and then each preset has a different set. We do have the Goth3D G-pix emitter that is subbladed into 3 rings. So depending on which preset we're on, that'll show off differently. Now, with regard to that programming, again, this can have some weird glitches and stuff like that, but this customer knows that. So all that to say is when you're ready to put it in the Saber, we can just go back and switch the thing off. And now what we want to do is align the switches by pushing them down, making sure that they're not sticking out. So just with our finger pushing the actuators all the way out. And then one thing I did on the chassis was I put this little Rebel logo so that when you're halfway in, but before you've actually reached the actuator, you can line up the thumb screw with that. And then once you get past there, it just goes in, no problem. Now you will need to engage this set screw because like I said, we want to make sure that the chassis goes up against that wall. So you don't need much pressure. As soon as you start to feel resistance, like right there, that's good enough. And if we wanted to, we can put the blade plug in, but we'll just leave it as is. So turn the Saber on. This has a 24mm KR bass speaker. So plenty of volume.
My name is yours.
So let's hop out. Let's put a test blade in it and we'll show off a couple things here. So this takes a 1-inch diameter neopixel blade. And again, we've got that little antique thumb screw for our blade retention. Plenty of cool sounds. We do have twist on and twist off. And I think we have thrust on as well. And maybe I turned that one off. But enough to keep it interesting and cool.
Kalnaka.
And again, with the color display turned off, we can actually operate the Saber like a regular Saber. When that's turned on, it really eats the resources of the Proffie. So while it's cool when the chassis is out and you can show it off, if you decided to turn it on, you'd hear some, you know, weird sound artifacting.
Padawan Torben.
So that is the Saber. When we're ready, we can, let's hop down here, take the set screw out, pull the blade out, use our Allen key to disengage the chassis retention screw. And again, we want to make sure that's almost all the way out so it's not scratching up the chassis. Same goes with the thumb screw. And then we just pull it out and it's good to go. So again, if we wanted to turn that on, And we can see that's really cool. Switch it to something else here real quick.
Master Endora.
But yeah, that is the saber. Can hit the kill switch, everything turns off. And if we wanted to recharge, take the battery out and do all that stuff. So to the customer, thanks for your patience on this one. I know we've been having communications back and forth, so you're ready to receive it and do all your cool programming stuff. And I can't wait to see what you do with it. To everyone else out there, thanks again for checking these out. I know this isn't your saber, so sometimes it may just be interesting to watch. But thanks for coming to the channel and checking it out. To anyone that has any questions, I don't often engage in the comments, but because this is one of those things that has like a new feature in it, you can ask me questions. But I highly recommend you go to the Crucible thread. You'll see the color display progress thread that has all that, and you can see what complications I had to go through to do the things I wanted to do. Because Frederick started that sometime in, I think it was 2024 or 2023, and then he got what he wanted out of it, and then it only took a couple people installing it to do the same thing he wanted. But I knew that once I got my hands on it, myself and my client would have different goals in mind, and in doing those things we discovered bugs and little things that come out with programming that hasn't been tested very much. So again, check out the Crucible thread for color display progress if you're truly interested. You can ask some questions in the comments. I'll get to them as I see them, and if there's something that I can answer there. But to the rest of you, again, may the force be with you.